And good afternoon, everybody. This is Vinny Millennial with Millennial Law, the strongest name in law. The date now is September 10th. September 10th, 2021. It's Friday. And we're going to get right down to it today. So, for the past couple, first of all, number one, you should all be subscribing in the YouTube channel. I keep saying it. I say it endlessly. Also, subscribe to the newsletter. Keep in mind, past couple weeks, we've been getting a little, some problems with YouTube, with Google, not Google, Google's been solid, but like with YouTube, with Facebook and Instagram, we're getting a couple of problems with, our outreach, I guess, whatever, because we're getting banned. So make sure you stay in the know, make sure you stay connected, make sure you get on the newsletter, make sure you subscribe to whatever messages we can get you, All right, so for the past couple weeks, past couple days, not weeks, but past couple days, we've been really trying to make this religious exemption video. It's been difficult because it's just simply, it's not like a hard and fast rule. So as I explained, it'll make a little more sense, but essentially this is something that's conceptual that we do in this country generally. So, it just becomes a little bit difficult to discuss, but I think after attempt number 15,472, I think I have a pretty good handle on this, and I think I know how to discuss it specifically now. So without further ado, let's go right into it. In this video is just, I guess I'll come up with a fancy title. The video will just be like, the anatomy, we'll say the anatomy of a religious exemption. Yeah, the anatomy of a religious exemption, or something to the effect. I'll think of something exciting. Anyway, whatever, let's get down into it. The names are important. Okay, so where does this whole idea come from, right? So religious exemption, what are we talking about here? So basically, we're saying in a nutshell that due to your certain belief system, belief values, you can't participate. It conflicts with certain things you want to participate in society. Recently, obviously, it's this vaccine. So by way of a little background, this whole concept began, I want to say the first recorded one in the States is in 1798. A bunch of clergymen and devout physicians formed a society that opposed vaccination back in 1798. They generally had back then, the rationale behind it changed over time. Back then it was, you playing God with people, and back then it prohibits the punishment of sinful acts. So for example, back then, because culture was different, it was if you got sick, let's say, if you got sick of sexually transmitted disease, that was like God's way of punishing you, right? So obviously it's changed over time. Nowadays it's become more scientific. So certain vaccines have fetal tissue and embryonic stem cells in them, which run into issues with certain religious sects. So, it becomes the science has created a different issue, a different rational basis behind it. Generally speaking, all states in the United States, except Mississippi, California, West Virginia, Maine, and New York, have basically allow their parents to take the religious exemption for their children for school mandates and vaccinations. Those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those 5 states generally for kids don't permit it. Don't permit a religious exemption. It's something that has to be tried in a court at some point. The state courts have essentially upheld it in New York in 2018 and beyond. But obviously, there are all the considerations. It's a lot of money to get to Supreme Court. It costs a lot of money to get there. So, but whatever. So what is it, right? So this concept derives from the idea of religious liberty in this country. We in this country believe, as a tenement of the American culture, is that you have the freedom to practice religion, freedom from an oppressive religion, whatever you like. But generally, that's one of the things that's put on the individual. It's a Bill of Rights kind of issue. It's freedom of the individual to choose what they want to believe in. So, but also at the same time, I gotta put it we can't. If religion's a fundamental human value, so a fundamental human concept, right? What you believe in your life, and we don't want to stifle it in this country, or we used to at least not want to stifle it. So we granted religious exemptions into certain practices in society that we would have mandated otherwise, and that's what we are today with the vaccination. Generally speaking, New York has been hostile to claims concerning the free exercise of religion. The Supreme Court's been a little bit different. The federal, Supreme Court's a federal thing. They've been a little, obviously they've been more supportive of it, upholding overall. You see I mentioned in other videos the Archdiocese versus Cuomo. That's a situation where you see the religious principles upheld. So New York's been kind of like hostile toward it, but it exists in New York. Like, let's be clear, like it totally exists. Like the only context that I could see that that they take a very firm stance on it is children being vaccinated in schools, but this is something that exists. It's a principle that's very real, and you should certainly assert it if you feel that you have a strongly held religious conviction. So for the basics, right? So, first it's what is the religion, right? So there's a test. The test comes from a case called Felon. There's a Felon Test of like what it means to be a religion. Religion, and this is verbatim text from the courts. Religion addresses the fundamental and ultimate questions of having to do with a deep and imponderable matters. So obviously, a deep thought and certain things we don't question God. Obviously, imponderable, right? So like, can't think about it because he's not on God's level. That's the whole idea. That's a whole Book of Job thing. If for all of you that are familiar with the Old Testament, it's a whole Book of Job thing. You can't get on God's mind, right? So second idea is, what something that constitutes religion is comprehensive in nature, and it's a belief system as opposed to just an isolated teaching. So, well, the first element is looking at the belief in a God, belief in a deity, in something that's imponderable. The second element is looking at a belief system, more than just an individual teaching something, but rather like a whole system of beliefs. And then the third element is that it's a religion can be recognized by the presence of certain formal and external signs, sign of the cross, Star of David, whatever the case is, right? So those are three elements that satisfy the Felon Test. Then once you've established that the religion is legitimate, then you start going into your religious exemption. The EEOC has always treated a religious exemption similar to a reasonable accommodation, meaning that you apply for your religious exemption, they have an interactive dialogue with you to see if they can provide some kind of reasonable accommodation for you. And if they can't, it's got to be because it's an undue burden to do so. That it's got to cause a substantial hardship on the company or on the particular entity. So it's always been treated as a reasonable accommodation. Some of the things that they assess, a company is supposed to assess is, when it comes to an undue hardship, the risk it poses to other employees in the area, or let's just say the risk it poses to others at the time, the availability of effective alternative treatment for you, effective alternative means. So an accommodation, right? Reasonable accommodation. Is there some place they could put you where you won't run that same risk? Is there something they could do for you to where you could, where you can accept the condition, the religious exemption, accept the condition, it doesn't really like negatively impact both your workload or like the workplace in general, whatever the case is. Or also something to think about is whether the actual number of employees who are requesting this. So if 100% of the employees are requesting the hardship, would it be requesting the religious exemption? Would it be too difficult? Would it be too much of a hardship on the company? So, that's an important consideration. I also have a couple of items here. I have why would you? So the question is, why would you seek a religious exemption? Right? Simply put, it's that certain actions contradict your core fundamental values and beliefs. So for a perfect example is with the science now, we know that, the vaccine, some fetal tissue is in there, embryonic stem cells might be in there. And if you're a pro-life person, if you're deeply held, devout Christian or whatever the case is, you're pro-life, you can't comply with that because now you're because now you're challenging these existential questions. Essentially challenging God, right? So you can't ask for that. So you can't have that. So that would be why you would seek it. And because as a country, we appreciate religious liberties, that's something that you'd have to go to a court for and fight about if your company didn't permit it. All right, so let's get down. So getting down to the nooks and crannies, right? So how do you apply for this religious exemption, right? So keep in mind that this is a concept. This comes from that concept of religious liberties. So every state's going to be different. There's no standardized form. There's no standardized rule. The Supreme Court doesn't have a form. Here's this form. This is Supreme Court or something like this. It doesn't exist. So it's a case-by-case basis, a state-by-state basis, and everyone's a little bit different, right? So remember, keep in mind, it's a concept. It's not a hard and fast rule. Conceptualize it. It's not a standardized form. It's going to depend on the employer. It's going to depend on the situations and everything like this. have a couple of points here. I write that generally speaking, you'll have to address a couple of issues, right? When you in your response, you'll have to describe the nature of your religious belief. You'll have to talk about your practice and requirements of the particular accommodation you're looking for. Essentially, you have to discuss the religion a little bit. Even Pastafarian apparently did it, right? Or this flying spaghetti monster, which might be Pastafarian, but I don't know. So you also have, the second element is, some cases you actually have to have like some kind of documentation or some authoritative body. Obviously you think in the Bible, right? You think in, the Torah, stuff like that. So the first part you have, the nature of religious belief and its requirements. Second part you have the documentation, the authoritative documentation. In the third part, you'd have to describe the reason for your request for the religious accommodation or the religious exemption. So basically, what's the reason? Discuss it. Is it that you have fetal tissue in the vaccine? Is it that, I don't know, is that it's embryonic stem cells? Is it some other reason in particular? Does it use an animal product? Are you Muslim? Does it use a part of a pig? I don't know, maybe that's what it is, but you have to go into that and discuss it. The fourth portion is usually you'd have to discuss the particular job functions that you can't do because of your religion. So that's another thing. So discuss particular job functions. Obviously, you have to talk about the reasonable accommodation that you desire, how you could fix the issue. This is, this is just your standard reasonable accommodation inquiry, just like any disability case. Then also you have to talk about, what's the time period, right? How long do you need this accommodation? Is it temporal? Is it all term? Is it long term? Or whatever the case is. So that's something that you'll have to discuss. What this kind of looks like in the workplace. If you want, perfect example, your HR team says, hey, we're gonna, vax everybody. You need to go back and say, no, I'm not interested. I need a religious exemption. This is why. Boom, give them the 6 elements that I'm telling you about in the section before. You send it to them in their email. They'll likely come back and they'll give you some kind of form to fill out, or whatever the case is. They'll give you some kind of documentation to fill out, which at some point, you'll fill out, you'll respond to, or you'll tell them whatever the reasons are about why you need this, whatever the case is. Like, you'll do the formalities, that's no problem, not a big deal. So now it becomes tricky, right? So now let's say you hand it in and you're all good and there's no problems. So problem solved, you're okay, right? You got your exemption, you're out. But what happens if they don't give it to you? What happens if they give you a hard time and they keep fighting you on it, and they say, okay, well, we're not going to grant this option anymore, right? Because that was happening in the beginning with some of the nurses, which I don't think is going to be the case anymore. So the question is going to be, so what do you do in that situation? So in that situation, look, you need to just stand firm. You need to say, no, I don't accept it. This is a reality. It does exist. There's nothing in the records. There's nothing in the law and the statute that says that you're not entitled to this, that says that you can't get it. There's no prohibition. Specifically, I want to point to what's going on with the Department of Health. Keep in mind that on the 18th, I want to say August 18th, Cuomo, before getting canned and sent on a donkey for, just raping his female staff and killing grandma. But before they sent him on his donkey, he did that order, whatever, that like consent order, where he wrote this up and he drafted. He had a big religious exemption in there on that August 18th document. Then by August 24th or 26th, when the commissioner in the Department of Health, that is not professional. That is not professional. That's because I'm up all night, people, preparing these things. All night. All right. So then he issued this, the Department of Health Chancellor, or whatever, the commission issued something on, like, I want to say the 24th or 26th. And they what do you call it? They were just, I don't know, they mentioned everything except religion, right? So people naturally interpreted that as, oh, well, they're excluding it. You're not excluding it. They just didn't mention it. Keep in mind that the law serves as gap fillers, generally speaking. So, and that's with everything. This is why a lot of these fines that were coming during the pandemic period, why they were getting overturned, because there's no rule behind it. It's just, and then what happens is the law puts gap fillers because they got to have something in there, and you wind up defeating these things. So in this instance, there's no law speaking about it. They just didn't talk about it. They touched on the first one, not this one. So that means that the first reference wasn't overturned. That means that it's still in effect. Okay, so that's how that works out. So anywho, so what were we here? So So they're pushing back. You're going to write your email to them. You're going to say, hey, I'm working for you for X amount of years. I'm ready, willing, able to do my job. I want to keep doing it. I don't think this is correct. I think that right now what you're doing is not nice. You're forcing me to choose between my beliefs and this, and that's not constitutional, that's not proper, blah, blah, blah. So you can write a legitimate, decent response. I have templates if you need. I try to be keeping track of all of them. I've just been basically just handing them out at this point. So if I'm more than happy to just show you a template that you could model something on or whatever. We've had success on all, basically all of them. So, we'll see. As things go, hopefully we continue to have success here. So whatever, you hand it in, you can do it. And then here's a big kicker, everybody. Go back to work. Go back to work good, be a great employee. Do a great job. Don't let them tell you that you voluntarily resigned. Don't let them tell you just to walk off the job. Don't walk off the job. Go there every single day. Go there the morning of. If they tell you they're going to throw you out on the 27th, you go there on the 27th in the morning, ready to work, and you go do your job just like normal, because you have no interest in leaving the job. It's not a voluntary separation. It's not a voluntary resignation. It is them canning you, and they do that because they don't want to pay unemployment benefits. And we're going to make sure that you get your unemployment benefits because you are ready, willing, and able to work, but for this nonsense. So, boom, go to work, be a great employee. Make sure they know what's going on. Make sure they see that you're working hard and you're ready, willing, and able to work. And make it clear that if they're going to term you, it's because they're jerks, and it's because they're actually terming you and you're not leaving nowhere. So that's that. Boom, boom, boom. So on the day of separation, my suggestion on the day of separation is that you sit there and you let them escort you out. You let them get police to escort you out, whatever the case is. Doesn't matter. That's what I would do, because, quite frankly, again, you're not quitting, okay? You're not quitting at all. They're escorting you out. Make it very clear, people. Make it very, very, very clear. You are escorting me out. This is not me leaving, and just make it very clear. Don't misbehave. Behave, because you don't want a misconduct claim against you, so let's show you do that. And that's really where we are at that point. At that point, then, you're in good shape. If you got the exemption, you're fine, you're out. If you didn't get the exemption, they're playing hardball. You've you've padded the file enough with good stuff that you could be able to win if there was kind of any unemployment issues or concerns. That's my last one. That is my last one. All right, so closing arguments here, closing discussions is, one, look, this video, obviously, it's not designed to take you on as a client, but also this video, you will not, if they want to terminate you, they will terminate you. This video is not to tell you how to keep your job. This video is to teach you the best way to polish yourself to either A, continue working if they don't give you a hard time, or B, how to polish yourself in the best possible way, so if shit does hit the fan, you have everything in place. You have all your proof that you're ready, willing to work. It's all evidence. You have your emails. You have this. You have a good understanding of the situation. You disclose everything. So, quite frankly, you're doing in a much better position. So that's really what the purpose of this video is to prepare you and prepare your mindset for what's about to go down. Because there's certain things you have to do to be ready to be able to be in a great situation. And, we have other videos I'd like you to take a look at. You can look at the videos about how to prepare for the perfect litigation, how to prepare for the disability discrimination claim, because, that's kind of similar to this and how we roll. And, we also have a checklist somewhere, too, as far as that disability discrimination checklist. So you might want to go there, too. There's also some good information. But all this stuff is good for you. Keep fighting, keep pushing. I just got some wins today that we actually had a victory for the exemption. So I'm gonna go ahead and take that stuff when we get notice of when we actually see what it looks like, and we'll catalog it and we'll share it, obviously, because that's really, again, like I said, that's really what we're doing here. When the time comes, I'll take all your money for representation. But for now, let's whatever. For now, we're just all in the fight together, and we're collectively building everything up. So that's it for now. This is the anatomy of the religious exemption, I guess. I will come up with a cool name, or my content writer will, because he's a savage. And alright, yours in laws, love, and lips. If you have any questions, send them to me. You have my email, you have basically my phone number, my YouTube. I'm sure there's other things that I have out there that I can't recall off the top of my head that you probably have access to. So please feel free to bury me with updates and stuff and questions. Alright? Thank you so much. Keep fighting. Don't give up. It's a small little blip in the road. and you'll be fine. Do not worry. Be strong, unvaxxed, unmasked, unafraid. All right. Yours and Lord's love and lifts. Peace out. Get stretching over to shut this thing down.